So in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about PvP on the consoles in particular, and go over a few weapon types which I think need some love in upcoming patches, but also I wanted to talk about some general Crucible stuff which I think would benefit the game. Of course, this is only my opinion. I'm intentionally staying away from the word nerf here. In fact, I don't really feel like anything in particular needs a huge nerf, more like some minor adjustments here and there. But there is also, of course, the PC version. It's pretty early days, so to start talking about balance changes would be a bit weird, but there is some stuff I wanted to talk about which is kind of influenced by my experience in the PC game. Before I go any further though, since we have a new platform now guys, I wanted to ask you if you could check out a poll in the description below and let me know which platforms you guys play on if you're watching this video, and also let me know in the comments, do you like seeing PC gameplay or would you prefer console gameplay more often? I want to provide the best experience and content for you guys, and I feel like it'll be best if I know what you prefer to see, so let me know your thoughts. Rest assured, I'll do my best to produce content here for all players on all platforms. So to the subject of this video, I feel like Crucible Balance is in a generally pretty good place. There are of course issues in the Crucible, there are things that people don't like. We've seen big, sweeping changes, the shift to 4v4 and all of that stuff, which is kind of a separate issue. There are some really powerful weapons in the game, but I feel like in contrast to Destiny 1, when hand cannons and then pulse rifles reigned supreme and auto rifles just felt relatively terrible in comparison, we don't quite have a situation like that in Destiny 2, or at least it doesn't feel like there is anything as severe in my experience. So I'm going to list a couple of things here. This isn't going to tackle every issue in the Crucible, I'm just kind of adding to the pool of ideas. So pulse rifles up first. Pulse rifles are supposed to dominate at medium and longer medium ranges, and I feel like they kind of bridge between the auto rifle and the scout rifle, but a few of them just don't feel quite right at the moment. The Lincoln Green, or the rapid fire frame class of pulse rifle, is in a pretty good spot for now in my opinion, and I don't feel like too many changes are really needed there. I'd just like to see more fast rate of fire pulse rifles actually in the game. There is also Vigilance Wing, which does its job incredibly well. It's nice that something a little bit quirky is actually pretty good, but when we get to the Nightshade class of pulse rifles, I feel like they need a little bit of love. The issue for this class of pulse for me is the way rounds spread at distance on these weapons. Recoil wise, they feel pretty good to actually play with. Nightshade feels nice to use, but beyond medium range, it feels a little bit too inconsistent, and this is a minor issue for pulse rifles in this class. Now, the way that the Nightshade or the Nurgle perform any of the weapons in this class, in theory, is not really a problem. However, the issue for me partly is that auto rifles still do incredibly well at the pulse rifle's optimum range, seeing relatively minimal damage drop off and still being pretty accurate. So I feel like perhaps a tweak is needed to improve consistency, particularly for the lightweight frame class of pulse rifles. On top of this though, if we want pulse rifles to be a bit more viable, I feel like we either need to see them become more effective at range, so more accurate with a bit less range drop off, but another possibility is that perhaps some auto rifles, particularly precision frame ARs, need to have an increase in damage drop off at range. Now I say this carefully because I like seeing auto rifles do well in the game, and I don't want people to think that I'm asking for them to be nerfed. I don't really see it that way. I think that there need to be some small adjustments, and if weapons like Uriel's Gift in particular were a pinch less devastating at longer medium ranges or even at long ranges, then it would open up the playing field a little bit for more diversity in the general assault class of weapons. Those are my thoughts though, and I'd love to hear yours below. The next big one that I wanted to touch on would be hand cannons in the game, and this weapon class is affected by a couple of disadvantages in my experience. They do of course have advantages, they do great damage, they have a pretty good time to kill, but the first issue I have is the bloom that we see on consoles for hand cannons. Having played a little bit on PC this week as a fairly average player, I've still found hand cannons to be so much more satisfying and less frustrating, and considering how good hand cannons can feel and the kind of fantasy attached to the hand cannon, I mean, they're kind of badass, right? I feel like they need a little bit of love. So on the consoles in particular, bloom, ghost bullets, however we spin that discussion, I think that there is an unfair amount of inconsistency on hand cannons overall. Hand cannons need paced, accurate shots, and that's awesome, it feels satisfying, but what doesn't feel so great is when your shots feel like they just vanish into thin air. Part of the issue with pacing shots is that we've got auto rifles and SMGs which just shred, and naturally trying to fire slowly quickly in a lot of those situations will cause you to lose out, yet when you fire as fast as you feel you need to, you're going to see that bloom increase and things become a little bit too RNG in my opinion. Sure, you need to use cover and play smart, that isn't up for debate, and yes, the inconsistencies are baked into the game, but we've seen hand cannons be good before. Whether bloom itself changes or accuracy is increased, I feel like there must be a bit more of a middle ground we can reach for hand cannons. And again, I'm not saying, buff them, increase their damage, make them just completely godly. I just feel like little tweaks, a little bit at a time can make, quite a lot of difference. But the limitations of hand cannons aren't exclusively the issue, and this is where I'm going to touch on more of a sweeping change that I would personally like to see. Frankly, I think there is too much flinch and screen shake from weapons in Destiny 2. Flinch to a degree increases the skill gap a little bit, and that's fine. Mostly when you're facing enemies head on, flinch isn't a huge issue. I don't really like how flinch feels personally, but I also don't feel like I have a justification for any huge changes to flinch caused by what's directly in front of you. However, in general play, there is an exception which I'll touch on in a moment. In general play, I feel like flinch caused by targets at the side of you or behind you needs some drastic reduction. I'm sure you've noticed if you're gunfighting somebody in front of you and you get hit from the side as well, you'll experience this kind of horrendous horizontal screen shake, and I just don't quite understand why it's so severe. It has the capability to completely dissolve gunfights that you're actually winning in, which to a small degree is okay, but of course when this happens, you're in a situation where often, if you do die, you're going to lose the trade that you would have had with the player you were initially engaging because they become so damn hard to hit. Also, the damage that you're taking from two players is either going to kill you or completely remove you from that engagement, and that's if you actually get to cover. So what it feels like to me is layering penalty upon penalty upon penalty for being caught in those situations, and while I agree there should be penalties and risk in your engagements, this one is simply frustrating and a bit too obnoxious. My personal vote is to blanket reduce flinch in the game, even by a very small percentage would be fine, but what I would really like to see is the flinch from sources not directly in front of you dramatically reduced. In my opinion, there are too many situations where flinch causes you to lose when it's coming from a source that you're unaware of or cannot actually avoid. I understand if you're being shot in the back as you chase somebody down, you might die, you might not have made the best decision in that engagement, but it doesn't feel like a good reason to lose a separate gunfight, when it's not purely because of the damage you're taking or even necessarily because of your gun skill in that fight. I mean, is it just me, or is having two players shoot you at the same time enough of a disadvantage already? I certainly think it is. So flinch is an interesting discussion. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. The other issue that I have with flinch though is that it makes it very difficult to use snipers in the game. More than it makes it difficult, it just makes it not fun. If we take rocket launchers, shotguns or fusion rifles, they're all really strong and feel relatively like power weapons. Snipers, however, have suffered to the point that I just don't use them in the game because snipers to me are most fun when you actually fight someone head on. If you're taking shots from a Mida and then you peek out and win that fight, it's really satisfying. Yet a lot of the kills that you get now will be on targets who aren't actually engaging you, which of course is okay, but in terms of other engagements, the flinch issue has helped to kind of neuter snipers even more than they have been through aim assist reduction, generally higher zoom scopes in the game, and the fact that, it's not like a shotgun. You put a shotgun against someone, they die. With a sniper, you gotta hit the head. You have to have some kind of level of skill to use a sniper, and I feel like this flinch issue is, really contributing to why snipers don't feel good. Again though, that's just my opinion. I feel like a blanket change to flinch would help here. But these are some of the standout issues in the Crucible for me. Again, they're just my thoughts. I'm not forcing them onto anybody. Some folks will say that, the things you say here are going to influence Bungie, and that may be the case for some of the big channels, but I really don't think that's the case here, guys. I would love to hear what you guys think below. Which changes would you like to see? Obviously, I think we need replayability, more fixes, quality of life stuff, as well as some kind of ranked play, but those are different issues for a different day. So drop a comment below. If you have enjoyed the video though, a like really helps me out. If you disagree with anything, then make your voice heard in the comment section and we can have a constructive conversation about how Destiny can improve. If you're new to the channel though, be sure to hit subscribe to see a lot more Destiny 2 content. I want to say another huge thank you to you guys for the recent support on the channel. We're at 115,000 subscribers right now, which is just completely completely insane. Obviously, we're going through some turbulent times, some very mixed opinions and feelings about Destiny 2, and I'm completely there with you guys, man. You know, it's the game that we all love, and I do feel like the game will improve quite a lot, but to those of you who've kind of stuck by the channel and continue to be positive and constructive and everything like that, it's really, really important, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for the continued support. It means an awful lot. As always though, thank you for watching the video, guys, and I hope you have an awesome day.